Good morning, everybody. May I request everybody to please take your seats so that we can begin the event? May I request the dignitaries to please take their seats on the dais? I'm happy to briefly introduce the main speakers for the plenary session. Dr. Suresh Ramanathan, Dean and Principal, Great Lakes Institute of Management. Mr. K. Mahalingam, President of the MMA and Partner Director, TSM Group of Companies. Dr. Vidya Mahambare, Professor of Economics and Director, Research and FPM at the Great Lakes Institute of Management. Mr. Suresh Raman, Vice President and Regional Head, Tata Consultancy Services, Chennai, and Group Captain R. Vijay Kumar, Executive Director, MMA. We have a small AV to be presented that would introduce each of them in a little more detail. Hemant.
Mr. K. Mahalingam, President of Madras Management Association and Partner Director of TSM Group of Companies, is a distinguished leader with over 35 years of experience. A graduate of NIT Trichy and IIM Calcutta, he is an active angel investor mentoring budding entrepreneurs. Dr. Vidya is a professor of economics and director of research at Great Lakes Institute of Management, Chennai. She has received prestigious grants for her research on female labor force participation and employability in India, including from the Marketis Center and World Bank. A regular media contributor and expert speaker, Dr. Vidya specializes in macroeconomics, microeconomics, and behavioral economics with a focus on growth, employment, and public policy. Mr. Suresh Raman is the Vice President and Regional Head at Tata Consultancy Services, Chennai, overseeing the largest delivery center with over 98,000 associates. With 30+ years of experience in management consulting and IT, he has held various leadership roles across sales, delivery, and operations globally. An alumnus of BITS Pilani, Mr. Suresh is actively involved in key industry bodies and government advisory roles, promoting digital transformation, talent development, and sustainability. Dr. Suresh Ramanathan is the Dean and Principal of Great Lakes Institute of Management, Chennai. With over 20 years of academic experience, he has taught at renowned institutions like the University of Chicago Booth and Texas A&M University. An expert in consumer behavior and brand engagement, his research is widely cited in top journals and major media. Dr. Suresh holds a PhD from NYU Stern and has a background in industry and media.
A very good morning to one and all present here. It's wonderful to see such a vibrant and dynamic audience here today. As we come together to celebrate International Women's Day, it's not just about recognizing achievements. It's also about continuing conversations that drive impactful and real change. Today, we bring together thinkers, leaders, and change makers who are shaping the future of work for women. It therefore gives me distinct pleasure to welcome you all to the Women at Work, Powering Progress, Shaping the Future, a special initiative by Great Lakes Institute of Management in collaboration with the Madras Management Association to mark International Women's Day of 2025. To officially begin, I'd like to invite all the dignitaries on the dais to please light the lamp. Thank you very much. I'd like to now invite Dr. Suresh Ramanathan, Dean and Principal, Great Lakes Institute of Management, Chennai, to deliver the welcome address.
A very, very good morning to all of you. Lovely to see this hall completely packed with not just young, bright women, but also quite a smattering of bright, young and old men as well. So thank you all, because I think this is, in effect, a celebration, not just of International Women's Day, but more importantly, a celebration of what it means to have women as part of the workforce and how women can be more empowered to deliver what they truly can. We live in interesting times. At this time, people are talking about rolling back woke. People are talking about taking out all DEI initiatives. Numerous companies have completely seized all their initiatives aimed at increasing diversity. So these are very interesting times, very troubling times in some sense to me. And when we are seated here to talk about empowering women, I think it becomes extremely important to see how we can still achieve what is absolutely essential, that we can actually ensure not just participation of women in the workforce, but also empowering them to achieve what they truly can, which is getting into leadership roles, and leading the way. For me, this is personal. When we think about how women can actually be empowered to do things, I have, in terms of my training, during my PhD days, I was exposed to a lot of research on what are called non-conscious biases, stereotypes. And a lot of my research has actually tried to get into this dimension of what we call non-conscious biases. And non-conscious biases are pervasive. No matter how hard you try, it is extremely difficult to overcome those biases. And today, when we are actually legitimizing these non-conscious biases in terms of how numerous initiatives meant to basically help women gain a leg up, those initiatives are being rolled back because of the pushback from what I might call the patriarchy. I think it is even more important for us to actually value what we are doing here. And I'm so happy that at this forum, we are seated here to discuss the role of women. And Professor Vidya, who's my dearest colleague here, absolutely amazing woman. The kind of work that she is doing at Great Lakes, I cannot even tell you. So I think the fact that she's here to present her report, which is, in very typical Vidya terms, extremely well researched. And I'm sure you're actually going to gain a lot of insights into what is happening. And she's here to talk to you about, a lot of paradoxes that exist in today's environment in terms of gender, in terms of women employment and empowerment. So I would really like today's session to simply be, to simply put aside all the noise that is happening outside and to think about what each one of us can actually do to make sure that India's workforce, at the very least, is truly diverse and can reach its potential. So I want to thank each one of you for coming. I want to thank Mr. Suresh Raman, our chief guest for the day, for being here. And I want to thank my entire MMA team here, for putting this together and partnering with Great Lakes. Thank you all. Enjoy the day. God bless you all.
Thank you, Dr. Suresh. You have always been a very vocal champion of all causes related to women. And this is something that we are all aware of, having been a part of the Great Lakes fraternity for the last 5 years with you, for which we remain immensely grateful. Next, we have Mr. K. Mahalingam, President of the MMA and Partner Director of the TSM Group of Companies, to deliver the introductory remarks.
Good morning, everybody. It's Friday morning and we have a packed auditorium. And an auditorium filled with women of, a lot of young women, but a lot of women not so young also. And a lot of men not so young actually. Okay. Adding to what my dear friend Suresh said, I think this itself kind of is a step in the right direction of what we are talking today, powering progress and shaping the future. I can see both here. There are steps of progress, long way to go, and all of you can shape the future for what we're talking about. And for the men, I should compliment Group Captain Vijay Kumar, who makes sure we have male attendance in these conferences, so their perspectives were all concerned, basically. Thanks, Group Captain Vijay Kumar, for doing this. Yeah. It is indeed my privilege and pleasure to share my opening remarks at this significant seminar, Women at Work, Powering Progress, Shaping the Future, organized by MMA in association with the Great Lakes Institute of Management. Actually, I wasn't supposed to come. I have a family function tomorrow day after. And I saw the list of speakers, and there I find two dear friends, Suresh Ramanathan and Suresh Raman. So out of curiosity to listen to them, I'm here. Actually, I'm here to listen, not to speak, actually. And I must mention that both of them go very, very long way back with me. Suresh Ramanathan, of course, was with me at IIM Calcutta. We go back only 40 years. That reveals our age, but so be it. We can't help that. So, and I must tell you, right from those days when it was not women empowerment, it's called women's liberation, women's lib. From the women's lib days, Suresh has been a champion of women's rights, so to say. Okay. So I found it nothing surprising that he's part of this, and he actually initiated this exercise at with MMA. And I must say, I must confess, maybe it's what's in a WhatsApp group should stay in a WhatsApp group, but I'm going to reveal a small secret here. Suresh and I are part of our batch WhatsApp group, and I can tell you, if it's anything about women, the guy shouting from the top of the WhatsApp group is Suresh Ramanathan, I can tell you. We have to push him back a little. No, there's a male perspective as well. No, so Suresh has been champion all the way, I must tell you, and it's heartening that he's doing this. Suresh Raman was my boss. He was my boss at MMA, president just before I took over. And I think somebody mentioned 98,000 people work for him. I'm not sure if all of us know. I didn't know till this morning that 40% of 98,000 women are women in that group. Okay, we are talking of 40,000 women working there. And who would know more about women's progress and rights? So Suresh is just the right man. So I'm luckily I was in sandwich between two Suresh Shadwin overall. I was sitting to one side. Okay, thanks Suresh and Suresh for doing this. Must thank Great Lakes Institute of Management for partnering with us. I think this is the second event I'm attending in partnership. We did an event with Great Lakes for Dr. Bala Chandran recently, and I must say it has been a pleasure working with them. And again, a lot of credit goes to Group and Vijay Kumar to get these kind of partnerships going, basically. Particularly look forward to perspectives of Ms. Preeti Arora, President, Global Capability Center, online, and Dr. Vidya Mahambre, Professor of Economics and Director, Great Lakes Institute of Management, on the key findings. Thanks, Vidya, for joining us. And understand from Suresh that you've done some cutting-edge work on this. We really look forward to your perspectives. Thank you again for doing this for us. Understand, it's a wonderful report. Honest, I haven't read the report, so it's also heartening to see participation from NHRD, NIPM, ISTD, and other organizations, reinforcing the significance of this dialogue in today's professional landscape. The very fact that bodies like this are part of this gives more power to this event. I must 30 seconds of bragging. MMA started in 1956, 8,000 members, 10 chapters, 14 consecutive award winners of the best management association in the country. All the credit to this man in his team, Group Captain Vijay Kumar. Just a couple of words, a couple of observations in my mind. I think India has traditionally, we have looked at India as a country where women have been not given so much rights. But the strange paradox is that we've had women prime ministers, women chief ministers, women presidents at the top level. So it's a paradox in many ways. But at the ground level, it doesn't seem to reflect the power that women have enjoyed at the highest level. We have a women finance minister today. So it really doesn't reflect at the ground. And if you look at recent times, look at the optics, 40,000 women working in TCS and IT sector and BPOs, one would be tempted to believe that things are a lot better for women. But are they really better is the question. And research reports like this actually throw light on what the reality on the ground is. I think this report done through primary research and secondary data throws a lot of light on that. So I think reports like this are important to give us the real picture rather than get carried away with the optics of it, basically. See, there are many issues that women continue to face despite all the progress. Stuff like bias in hiring, pay disparity, culture and societal expectations, safety concerns, unconscious biases, which Suresh spoke about, lack of family support and networking opportunities, workplace harassment, etc. These continue to happen despite all the progress. Even, and we talk of work-life balance, even somebody as successful as Indra Nui openly admitted that's almost impossible. So given that, I think today's discussion is it's going to be worth its weight in gold for all of us who are attending this. There are many steps being taken in terms of legal frameworks to safeguard women and etc. But there's a lot needs to be done in this. The research report is being released today, highlights these challenges, but also offers practical, actionable recommendations to enhance women's workplace participation and boost their engagement. We are indeed privileged today to have industry experts who examine these issues closely, experienced it at work, Suresh Raman, Dr. Vedya, Dr. Preeti, etc., and Suresh himself, who's been pioneering this initiative. We are indeed fortunate. I must say that this session will not only be enriching and educative, but I'm convinced it's going to be eye-opening for many of us, including me. All of you have a great session. I wish to thank the entire management committee, the management secretary team for putting this together. Thank you. All of you have a great session.
Thank you, Mr. Mahalingam, for setting the context so appropriately. Before we move on to the next segment, we have a little bit of a audience engagement situation here. We work in academics, so we quite understand what it means for all of you to look at, one after the other, people coming and saying random things, and you're all getting bored and trying to figure out when this seminar is going to end. So in order to kind of take a break from that monotony, we have a small reality check. It's a poll. There will be a QR code which is flashed on your screen. We'd like you all to take out your mobile phones and keep it ready. The poll will run. We have 3 questions. Each question you will have about 30 seconds to contemplate an answer, at the end of which you will see the dynamic bar graphs writing up and down. So the first question is already placed here before you. Please whip out your mobile phones, scan the QR code, and let's hear what you want to say. The first question is, how does young male employment, early 20s? Sorry, this is not the first question. Yeah, sorry. Yes. In what percentage of highly and similarly educated dual earning couples do wives earn more than husbands, according to you? This is really not a data point. We just want to understand what you think.
What 50 only? 55 people are responded. Come on, better all of us put your phone out and respond. Then only we'll move to the next one.
Think of it as going back to school. The teacher has given you an assignment. Okay, the last 10 seconds of the poll, please kindly contribute. We'd love to hear your voice. Okay, so we stop here. We have about 58% of you. No, sorry. Oh, the number is rising. Okay, we'll stop the poll here. So we have the maximum number of people responding that you think about 20% of the urban couples. And rising, right, and counting. Okay, so majority of you think that 20% of highly and similarly educated couples, dual learning couples, in those kinds of households, women actually earn more than men. Now we are talking. Right, and we move on to the next question. Question is, what percentage of urban women in India are in employment as per official statistics, according to you, based on what you've heard, what you've read, what you know, what you perceive, based on how you understand your workplace? Right, as we can see, majority of you seem to feel that around 40% of urban women in India are in employment as per official statistics. Optimistic, huh? I like it. Chennai, very nice. But does the job market share the same enthusiasm? We'll find out when Vidya gives her overview shortly. Shall we move on to the next question? This is the last one. How does young male unemployment, that is men in the early 20s, how does young male unemployment compare to young female unemployment in urban India? Okay, the audience is actually inherently skewed with a larger number of women representing the audience than women. And I can see that the frustration is showing in the graph. Okay, so I think as a ballpark, we have the majority of you feel that female unemployment is higher. It's a telling insight. If young women are struggling more to find jobs, maybe it is time to ask, are opportunities truly equal or is something else holding us back? Well, I think we've come to the conclusion of these polls. Thank you very much for participating. And at the end of this very insightful polling session, I'm going to request Dr. Vidya to come and share with us the overview of her research report. It will really tell us if perception lags reality or whether whatever voices have been shown here are actually true in today's day and age. Dr. Vidya, over to you. இது வந்து ஒரு கிளாசிக் கேஸ் ஆஃப் மூர்த்தி சிறியது ஆனால் கீர்த்தி பெருசு.
Very good morning to all of you. Thank you very much for coming out here in the morning with such good force, and thank you MMA and all dignitaries for participating. I will try and see what you have answered, and some of it is right, some of it is somewhere in the middle. We'll see how it goes. So if we can put up the PPT. So what I'll do is I'll just take you through the key findings of the report. There are a lot of other findings which you will see in the actual when you see the digital copy of the report. Okay, so we have only 10 minutes, so I'll just take you through the quickly what we say. So in last few years, there has been a significant gain in terms of women employment in urban. So please remember, we are talking only about urban India right now and not rural. Traditionally, in urban India, employment of women has been lower than in rural areas because in rural, a lot of employment is in farm and related sectors. So there's a 10% increase in last, from 2017-18. And in overall, but as well as in every sub-age group. So if you see in women in 20s, women in 30s, women in 40s, in 50s, in every age group, there has been an increase. Okay, so that's a big positive, of course. However, despite this increase, urban employment of women remains close to 30% and not optimistic 40% that I think the majority of the audience thought. Generally what happens, we know only people who are similar to us, and if our friends work, we extrapolate and we think, majority else are also working. But measured employment and women employment, whatever is measured, there is underestimation bias, because a lot of women, if they're home-based, if they're doing some earning, they don't record in a survey, they don't say I'm working. Okay, so there is definitely underestimation bias, but nonetheless, it is only close to 30%. In urban India, however, there are better quality jobs and people or women earn more than in rural India. So even though lesser work, they are essentially many more. Half of them are in regular salaried employment. So, that's definitely, much better. Within the different age groups, around 38% in their 40s. So you can see, you can relate easily as the children grow up and so on, more women can join workforce. So women who are in their 40s essentially have a higher employment rate than rest of the age groups, even though in every age group we have, we have seen the increase in participation of women. But if only 30% are right now employed, and which is an improvement, that nonetheless means large number of women remain outside the workforce. Okay, and if we try to put a number, because generally people like to remember it in terms of absolute numbers, how much that comes to, it is essentially around 89 million only in urban India, the women who are not in workforce. So if we compare to other countries, in India we are saying 30%, in the rest of the world, even in developing countries, 60%, 70% women work. Okay. So if you see, that means essentially the entire population of, France, UK, Germany, or 3 times Australia, we are talking only about women, and women only in urban India, right? And if we see out of these, how many are highly educated, that is at least graduates and above, there are 19 million women in urban India who are graduates and above are not currently in employment. Okay, so there is a lot of untapped potential, of course, for women itself, for their empowerment, but also for the economy. So if I see from the macro angle, in general, the numbers are put out in various reports, like if all these women work, how much GDP will increase and so on and so forth. So there is a lot of untapped potential to it. However, and positive thing is, the proportion of women working can significantly go up further, because in education, we see now there is gender parity. Even if you see, in fact, this proportion is slightly higher only for women who are in age group, but you can see even in early 20s, men and women, 30% of them are still in higher education. So there is almost complete, on an average, gender parity in urban India as far as education levels go. Second positive thing, positive from the labor market perspective, is women are getting married, women, and that means men also, are getting married later. So if you see in 99, 2000, around 60% of, 61, 62% of women in the age group of 20 to 24 were married. That proportion is significantly down now to less than 40%. Marriage nonetheless remains universal in India. You can see in 30s, almost the entire, nearly everyone is married. But nonetheless, if the marriage is delayed and the education is rising, single women have much more opportunity to participate in the labor market and have wholesome jobs before, they start their families, okay, which is, of course, is going to be a big positive. So these are, positive sides, progress side, and of course, Mr. Suresh Raman will, speak a lot about, I suppose, IT, and how at the starting level, the employment of women is 40% plus. And Mr. Mahalingam spoke about, women at the higher leadership level and how much progress. He said he hasn't seen our report, but our report exactly starts with that. That is the political leadership, presidents, prime ministers, finance ministers, lot of state chief ministers, all of them have been women, but how that has not translated into at the lower levels in terms of empowerment. However, we also asked you a question about the unemployment rates. And who you think between men and women have the higher unemployment rates among young adults. So here you go. Majority of us thought it is women unemployment rates which are higher. In reality, men unemployment rates are higher in 20s. So what that suggests? It suggests that we have to create jobs for both women and men, right? But you are partly right. If you had considered in your mind only about highly educated workforce, then it reverses. That is, women unemployment is higher than the men unemployment. So it's okay. You are right also partly, and you are wrong. Okay, so it depends on whether we look at the overall picture or we look at only higher. But whichever graph we look at, in early 20s, unemployment rates are high, right? And that means we need simply much more quality jobs. And, a lot of corporates are here, and we know very well, and there are some results in the report where we show that essentially, unless the quality job creation increases massively, it will be very difficult for women employment to increase significantly. Okay. And why that is the case? Because if you see, even though the men unemployment is higher in 20s, virtually every man is in employment when it comes to the, by late 20s, one has to get married. And that means one has to have some earning because there is a still male breadwinner norm that men have to work. And that means finally, whatever job is available, men take. That means men employment becomes nearly 100% if you see, right? So because this norm, we say there are norms for women, there are strong norms for men as well, right? So if, so we have to accept that. And since that is the case, women's job really cannot come at the expense of men, right? We have to have jobs for both. So that means in this early 20s, for highly educated workforce, we really need much more jobs if we have to avoid essentially diversity backlash. So you see, this is the survey which we had done some time back within Great Lakes, highly educated workforce, right? That is MBA postgraduates. You clearly see, means these may be perceptions. It may not always be reality, right? We are not saying corporates always do this. But even if perception is there that women are favored because of, percentage of women percentage need to go up, then that's not nice. And what Dean Suresh spoke about the diversity backlash, elsewhere, maybe that's coming here. Maybe it's coming after 5 years. Maybe it's coming after 8 years. But it's coming unless the overall number of jobs go up. Okay, so that is one thing. So there is a lot more in the report about this, which you can read, different results. But this will remain very true. It is not like women against men. It has to be women and men and jobs for everyone, essentially. And if that does not happen, that is, if overall number of jobs don't go up, and that means if women employment proportions don't go up, and if we compare to China and India, we know we have a lot of demographic dividend, right? We have talked about it for several years now, I think couple of decades. Now there is a talk about how India will age in another 20 years, right? So for many years we are talking. So if you see this blue line, dotted blue line, that is the proportion of number of working age population in India. Other line is number of working age population in China. So clearly China is aging, right? All of us know that. But now if you see how many people actually work in the sense are in paid work. A lot of people work, women also work at home, men also work at home, but that is unpaid. When I say work, I'm just saying right now employment in paid work. If you use the same labor force participation rate or employment rate currently, China will continue to have a lot more people employed for foreseeable future, right? And that means we saying we have demographic dividend, essentially our demographic dividend, we are not utilizing at all because they are not in employment. Okay, so even if China is aging and their average age of workforce is increasing, nonetheless, simply by number of hands, China will have a lot more people in work. And this is only related to women because all the men work in China, all means virtually all, and virtually all the men work in India as well. Okay, so this gap essentially comes only because of lower employment among women. Okay, so this we must keep in mind. I think there's a question about, this is our primary survey or the research we did recently about among highly educated couples. And there was one question about that. Equal career priority, this is very heartening. A majority of the couples say that there is an equal career priority. But when the priority is for, one, then of course the male career takes priority, and only in 5% of families, female career is priority. That is what they answer. Not really unexpected, because these are young couples, there will be small child at home. So essentially mother takes the primary responsibility. But when they say 65% say that have an equal career priority, in 62%, husbands earn more. Right? So even if it's an equal career priority, maybe industries differ, maybe number of hours they can put in is differs. So majority of the families, still even they are similarly educated, men earn more. Wife, you were right. I think majority answered like around 20% of women in couples, women earn more. That was, you're very close. In 70% women earn, wives earn more. And when it comes to perception about if there is equal merit, whether career progressions are different, right? 65% of women believe career progression is different, even when the merit is same. Only 38% of men believe that career progression is different when the merit. So we'll get into the reasons, because if I explain it will just take too long. So we'll just tell you the numbers right now. When there is a panel discussion next, we will discuss about this lot more. But clearly the perceptions differ quite a bit. When I'm saying motherhood penalty, in the sense we are comparing between rural and urban. So in urban India, around 44% of single women work. That is before they get married, right? After marriage, there is a significant drop. Among all married young women, only 33% work. And with the arrival of a child, only around 20% work. In rural India, this doesn't happen. There is no drop between married and a mother with a child, because maybe work is much more flexible. Farm work, you can carry the baby as well. In urban India, jobs will be essentially regular salary jobs are like full time, right? Means now, of course, work from home has come, but in general before that. So that means, of course, there are a lot of policy. One policy which haven't explored enough in India is whether we have, of course, 6-month maternity leave and all that, but we have, and the corporates have to provide, I think, the child care on the premises. But one thing we haven't explored, as in Western countries, child care in the school itself, after school hours. Right? Because then child doesn't have to be transported elsewhere and so on and so forth. So anyway, we can discuss that later, but there's a significant drop. We did another survey on remote work. That is, when women are working from home, what are their perceptions about stress level, productivity, those kind of questions. So around 1 in 2 women report higher productivity while working from home, and their stress level are essentially lower. However, around half of them, 46%, essentially worry about the longer work hours. So here the work would mean office work, as well as those who work from home will know when you're at home, essentially is dual job, right? So housework, and so overall number of hours just increase. Multitasking becomes too much. When you are at home, it is like at office it's different. You can finish that and come home and do, but here you're all the time doing multitasking. So definitely half of the women worry about that. And there is also perception. I'm saying perception because I don't know whether this is reality. Okay, so the right word to use is perception. Around 40% of mothers believe that they do not have equal chance of promotion despite doing all the work and despite being productive if they are working from home. So these are some of the things maybe corporates can look at, how you overcome these perceptions when you allow women or anyone, women, men, to work from home, what we can do about it. Some unspoken barrier, not unspoken, relatively less explored or hidden barriers is single women are working in much higher proportion, right? But in India, large majority of women move even in urban areas after marriage. And that means even if you're having a job before marriage, essentially it becomes very difficult to hold on to jobs, and you have to, search again. The whole process has to start again. So this is one, unspoken barriers. Women migration for employment is only 3%, right? That also suggests there are some barriers in terms of maybe how single women can come to cities and stay in a safe environment. And I know, for example, Tamil Nadu state government is doing a lot of work in terms of working women's hostel and making them safe and clean and up to date. Such kind of policies will be really required. Urban spot, if, the city just grow whichever way it grow, then the commuting becomes longer. So these are the issues, which women struggle with when they try to work. One one of our findings, I want to little bit talk about here, which is counterintuitive to what we may think, is women who are employed face higher domestic violence. We normally would not think that, because women who work have earning power. They have definitely more bargaining power in the terms of decision making at home. They definitely have more mobility. All that is positive. But you see this, which is 32% of women who are employed, they themselves justify violence against them compared to women who are not in paid work. And we believe this comes from the fact that essentially women are thrust upon them from very young age, face of ideal mother or a wife. And if I'm not able to fulfill that, that image which I'm portrayed, I blame myself essentially that I'm not able to do that. And essentially then I try to compensate it by saying that. So this really we have to discuss and figure out, how we can get women out of this. So for example, we never heard, means I'm sure a lot of men are supermen, but we never heard Superman awards. But we have awards for like super women, right? I'm not sure we should have those awards. Women don't, because then it's excessive pressure, essentially. Anyway, but education definitely helps. If you're more educated, you can overturn, you face much less violence at home compared to if you're lower educated. Okay, something that we need to have much more dialogue in policy circles and in society as we go ahead. So to sum up, and we'll talk about more of this in the panel discussion, that lot of job creation is required, quality job creation, men are equal stakeholders, and if situation has to change, we must have government, corporates, and society working together. So thank you very much, and we'll talk a lot more.
Thank you, Dr. Vidya, for that very enlightening, rather brisk, and very stark portrayal of the condition and the situation that prevails in women's urban employment. I think you have nicely laid the field for us to actually scan the QR code in order to access the report to see exactly the details that you have very succinctly captured in your presentation here. So we come to the much awaited moment, which is the release of the research report. The report is titled India's Gender Employment Paradox. May I invite our esteemed dignitaries on the stage to do the honors and unveil this very valuable piece of research. Thank you very much. To mark this occasion, we are honored to have Mr. Suresh Raman, Vice President and Regional Head of Tata Consultancy Services at Chennai with us. I request you to please take the stage and deliver the inaugural address.
Good morning to all of you. I'm honored to be here today at this important seminar and organized by Great Lakes in collaboration with MMA to celebrate International Women's Day 2025. I think rightly, I think they use the word celebration, right? I think they use the word celebration. I think it's a matter to celebrate definitely. When women rise, the world rises with them. I think we have seen the Western world, how it has risen. I think there are a lot of talk about India in the report by Dr. Vidya. I think very important statistics which has been brought out. Probably she should have taken more time and borrowed my time and spoken a little bit more about the report. So that's what I was feeling about when she told the numbers. I would like to thank Mr. Mahalingam, President of MMA, Dr. Suresh Ramanathan, Dean, Great Lakes Institute of Management, and of course, Group Captain Vijay Kumar, for inviting me to share my thoughts on this highly relevant theme, Women at Work, Powering Progress, Shaping the Future. I think it's a very apt title that my speakers before talked about, Powering Progress and Shaping the Future. My compliments to the Great Lakes Institute of Management on the launch of the research report. It's both timely and relevant. Timely and relevant because I add to what Dr. Suresh Ramanathan mentioned about the pendulum swung to wokeism, and now the anti-wokeism pendulum is swinging back. I think it's probably the right time to look at this report and see how we can leverage this better. I strongly believe that this report is not just about identifying barriers, but also about offering actionable solutions. Key takeaways from this report will be instrumental in understanding how we can enhance gender diversity, improve recruitment policies, create flexible work environments, and most importantly, challenge the cultural and societal norms that limit women's potential. I urge everyone here to engage with the findings and consider how they can be applied in your own organizations to drive meaningful change. I'm sure the panel will discuss in detail many of these issues. I think a lot of metrics were brought about by Dr. Vidya. I think she talked about that 30%, 89 million, 19 million, all the metrics. I think very important to understand. And she mentioned about a lot of jobs creation. Many of the forums, in fact, we discussed with the government also. It's all about creating more jobs. Then automatically a lot of these things will get solved. In TCS also, when we talk about how we are going to do at the future, most important thing is look at growth. And we say growth is a secret of our energy. When things grow, automatically everything will happen. So I think that is what we need to look at, how to make everything prosperous for ourselves, our organizations, and the country as well. Who said change happens naturally? Progress is not automatic. It is intentional. Here, I would like to say a few things. Normally in these forums, I talk about 4 I's. I for intent, whether there is an intent with the organization to do the right things, right? Intent by the government to do the right things. Intent by the individual also to do the right things. Very important, actually. All these 3 forces have to be in play. Whether intent in terms of recruitment, in terms of providing the learning and growing environment in the organizations, the type of infrastructure and environment, whether it be, I think during COVID, a lot of online courses came into being, right? And what is the investment we need to make? The time, efforts. When I say investment, it is also by the individual to learn and grow. It's also by the organizations to invest the time and efforts for the upliftment of women in the organization, and also by the government. And all 3 things are happening today. So things are much more positive than what it was earlier. And the 4th I is about integration. I think very important to ensure the disparities are not there and how they're integrated, how women are integrated in the organization. And this year's International Women's Day theme is Accelerate Action. That reminds us, while women have made remarkable strides, many challenges persist. The reality is, despite decades of efforts, women still face barriers that slow down their growth in the workplace. Accelerate action, if that is a theme. Let action be an acronym. A, advocate for equity. C, cultivate inclusive leadership. T, transform workplace policies. I,
invest in women's career growth, and open doors for representation, and N, normalize work-life integration. I'm not calling it balance. Our chairman of Tata Group talks about work-life integration. And with the mobile world, internet world, it's no longer that people are working from office only or working from home. They're also we're attending to personal things from office as well today. So it's a mix, right? So work life has got integrated, whether we like it or not. The technology has made it happen that way, and we also enjoy that actually, right? It has given us flexibility. So I think very important to understand, and I feel from a tech industry perspective, we have been fortunate because of technology has enabled us. We learned a lot from the manufacturing industry earlier decades, but it's now also time for the manufacturing industry and other industries to look at what they can pick up on these policies and how things happen in the tech industry. Not that tech industry is perfect. Definitely, there is always opportunities to improve. Similarly, the professional services industries, whether it's legal or the chartered accountants, finance areas, etc. I think these professions have shown a lot more for the women to have right career path. So end of the day, it's all about tripartite way of making things happen from the individual perspective, the company perspective, as well as the government. In TCS, we follow a 5-pillar strategy to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think end of the day, it's all about equity, right? More than diversity, inclusion. As long as things are equalized, things will happen. We believe in representation, ensuring all segments are represented. We believe in enablement. There are systems for equitable workplace. We believe in engagement, connecting and creating network for diverse communities, and creating a culture, creating a workplace environment where employees can interact with each other. And here I would like to just take a pause here in terms of when we talk about culture, the interaction with each other is very, very key. We used to have challenges in many industries and including our industry where people wanted to work from home, but it doesn't help them in the long run. They need to interact with their colleagues in the office. It helps them solve the problems faster. It helps them learn new things from each other and so many things, right? And they also want to change. Sitting at home, working 9 hours continuously is, I think, is a bane. It's not a boon. So we believe strongly, of course, there could be a balance. There are people in TCS, I can quote that there are people, women who worked for a very long time from home pre-COVID. I'm not talking about post-COVID or during COVID. When there are genuine reasons, the supervisor and the HR teams decide what's best for the individual. So it is case by case handle, and also the type of role, etc. And the other thing is about development, building the right skills. I think women need to build the right skills. Especially, I would like to request all of you to think when there is a career break happens, and people want to step in. There needs a lot of introspection on what you want to do and what they can learn. And here organizations also have to step in, which is what companies like us do, how to ensure they have some learning opportunities before they come back and join us, because technologies are changing today every day. When we talk about advocate for equity, there are organizations who are committing to diversity, equity, inclusion, and more women are reaching leadership positions today. We are creating systems which provide equitable workplace related to policies and infrastructure. But the persistent challenge is the gender pay gap still exists, and women are underrepresented in top decision-making roles. Pay gaps don't close on their own. Equity should be the foundation of hiring, promotions, and compensation structures. That is advocate for equity, right? And cultivate inclusive leadership. I think there was a talk on, she was talking about non-conscious bias, and I think all of you talked about it. When you talk about inclusive leadership, the progress in terms of more companies are focusing on this, building diverse leadership teams. And it is happening, but is it enough is always a question. But the persistent challenge is women still hold only 10% of CEO positions globally, and unconscious biases impact career progression. I think Mali and Dr. Vidya talked about how things are happening at President, PM, and CM levels, but it's not translated, right? Companies like us, we ensure that we build right capability through leadership and role model connects, coaching, and mentoring across all levels, whether it's junior, middle, or senior levels. And it's not just about having women at the table, but ensuring their voices influence decisions that shapes future. We have a lot of success stories in TCS. Some of them have gone into the TCS board, one of them, and another person has also stepped in as a chief operating officer in another Tata Group company as well. Not only within TCS, they are also moving across Tata Group companies. Transform workplace policies. I think we talked about. While flexible work policies and parental leave are becoming more and more common, the persistent challenge is women are more likely to experience career stagnation after maternity breaks, and many industries still penalize caregiving responsibilities. At TCS, we have two things. I think many of the IT industry, tech industry is doing this, and many of the other companies also followed suit. We have something called Rebegin for women to come back after taking a long break as well. And similarly, we have Ethos, an initiative to enable, engage, and develop employees on the maternity continuum extending through their parenting journey. Parenthood, caregiving, or career breaks should not be the barriers to growth. The right policies create pathways, not dead ends. So here I would like to have some anecdotes. For example, when people come back to work, they ask for a lighter role. I mean, that's the wrong thing, and they think some role is better than what they were doing before. They say, can I go into HR? As if HR doesn't have work, right? And in fact, after they go to that particular HR area, then they realize they have to work harder than ever. So people think that the earlier role was tough and the other roles are thing. Similarly, some people said, no, can I do CSR? And when I do CSR, they have to go and meet the communities in the hot sun. They have to travel everywhere. And when they do that, after 3 months, they come back to us and say, boss, my earlier project was better. I was able to sit in an air-conditioned office. So please, I think all of you, please ensure that don't ask for a lighter role, because then you are actually coming down. You are belittling yourself. Never ever do that. You are competing and you want equity. So I think next is about women career growth. Women are increasingly entering STEM, right? Finance as well as leadership roles. But the persistent challenge is women still receive less venture capital funding than men, and fewer women get assigned to high impact projects. Companies like us, we have leadership development programs for junior, we call it iAspire, we have middle level, iExcel, senior levels, all to propel the journey towards personal and professional excellence. High impact roles and leadership opportunities should be assigned based on potential and not on past patterns. And opening doors of representation is key. There is growing representation in boardrooms and executive rooms. Definitely it's improving, but it's a long way to go still. Over the past decades, women's representation has increased at every level of corporate management. Most notably, women today make up 29% of C-suite positions, compared with 17% in 2015. But progress has been much slower earlier in the pipeline at the entry and manager levels. Persistent challenge. I think McKinsey and others talk about the broken rung phenomenon, means fewer women are promoted to first level leadership, limiting that pipeline to higher level positions. I think as an organization, we have seen at least 65% representation increasing at the leadership levels, middle and junior, and as well as senior. Talked about workplace integration. The progress has been made and mental health and well-being conversations are more visible today. The persistent challenge is women continue to handle a disproportionate share of unpaid domestic labor, leading to burnout and career drop-offs. And that's where we need to have the culture that supports balance and supports progress. On a lighter note, I'd like to say, all of you are aware of in today's world, LLM and SLM. I thought I will coin something called WLM. So all of you guessed it, right? Women's language model. And it's much more complex, much more comprehensive, and adaptive, intuitive, always evolving. And AI processes fast, but women process data faster. In fact, the retrieval of the data is very high. 20 years back, a husband would have had a fight, and the woman will be able to remember everything. The men will be caught unawares, right? So I'm talking about the potential. AI may predict patterns, but women create patterns. I was also thinking on a lighter note again, can NVIDIA Blackwell RTX 50 series process faster than women? I don't think so, probably, right? And women multitask more than a parallel processor and perform tasks faster than an NVIDIA chip. I think Wi-Fi, all of you are connecting. Every time you connect to a network, remember that women's invention made it possible. The first computer programmer was Ada Lovelace, all of you know. The first bug was invented by women as well. So I think end of the day, we are on the right track. But individuals need to invest, corporates need to invest, government needs to invest. The future looks bright and shiny. It's up to us, men and women, to power the progress and shape the future of women. And women need to support women in the career growth as well. So most of the people, I think today we had a conversation where many of the women who have succeeded had a lot of men mentors. Probably we need more women mentors, right? I think tech industry has taken some lead, definitely, but still a long way to go. But AI will help probably further, and we need to leverage AI for that. And the future is with us. And I don't know, proud to be part of Tata Group, and which had illustrious and super successful women like Lady Meherbai Tata, who made the Child Marriage Restraint Act possible in India in early 1900. And Lady Nawaji Bai Tata, who was the first woman director on the board of Tata Sons. So I think this seminar is a call to action. It is a platform to exchange ideas, share solutions, and commit to creating workplaces that are inclusive and equitable. Let us ensure a future where every woman can lead, innovate, and thrive without limitations. I look forward to discussions and insights that will emerge from today's seminar. Let's continue this journey of powering progress and shaping a future where everyone, regardless of gender, can thrive. Thank you once again for this opportunity to be part of this important conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Suresh Raman. Your talk was very informative. I particularly love your unique spin on the accelerate action and creating an acronym for action. Your 5-point strategy, the Rebegin and Ethos programs at TCS, and the very anecdotal experiences that you brought about the Tata Group's commitment to women right from the early days. And of course, this also made me remember Ms. Sudha Murthy's letter to Mr. J.R.D. Tata in 1972 about, allowing women to apply for job positions at Telco Pune, if I remember correctly. Right. So thank you very, very much. Up next, we have another leader in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. She comes to us from CRISIL in Bombay, so she's joining us online. This is a special keynote address from Ms. Preeti Arora. She's the president of CRISIL Intelligence. There is a very brief AV introduction to her, which is 1 minute, please.
Ms. Preeti Arora is the President of Global Capabilities Centers at CRISIL, where she leads efforts to scale and enhance productivity across various capabilities. With a career at CRISIL since 2000, Ms. Preeti has held key roles in ratings, GR&RS, GE, and corporate strategy. An economics graduate and gold medalist MBA from International Management Institute, Ms. Preeti collaborates with business leaders to drive growth and talent mobility.
This segment is structured a little differently because this is going to be a conversation between Dr. Vidya and Ms. Preeti Arora. Dr. Vidya.
Good morning, Ms. Preeti. Welcome to join the session. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Am I audible?
Thank you. Yeah, you're audible and your video is clear as well. Most welcome.
Great.
So thank you, Preeti, for joining us. I know you're traveling. Can you hear me, Preeti?
Yeah.
Yes. So thank you very much for joining us. Just for everyone else, Preeti and I was a colleague in CRISIL. We worked together for several years. Preeti, if I'm right, this is your 25th year perhaps with CRISIL. So
That's
quarter
right.
of a century. So over the years now you have done several hats, right? And several leadership positions changing from, domains to domain. And very recently in your AV, our introduction was that president of GCC, Global Capability Center. But just now she has moved to president of CRISIL Intelligence. Can you just tell us over the years how you have felt the importance of, executive sponsorship from top leadership? How important it is in terms of, moving the diversity as well as inclusion agenda, inclusion of all and diversity?
Sure. No, thank you, Vidya, for first of all inviting me. It's a privilege to be here, and thanks to the Great Lakes Institute as well as the Madras Management Association. And congratulations on your report today as well. Like you said, Vidya, my experience over 25 years, and I've been passionate about the subject on D&I and inclusion, and therefore have seen that over several years now. I would definitely say that the sponsorship from the top, is the topmost enabler for success in this area. And the reason I say that is because it does many different things. One, it really sets the tone for the organization, and leaders play a very, very critical role on how that cascades across people, managers, across teams at large. Second, I think it decides on the investments within a corporate setup as well, right? And at a larger community level too, because one is about the economics and putting the right level of investment within the company for some of these critical initiatives, but it's also about the bandwidth. It's about the bandwidth of the top management, again, of the people managers, the capacity you would give to such initiatives. And I think largely it helps to modify behaviors. It helps to evolve the culture of the organization. So I really do feel that, the involvement, everybody tends to emulate, what they see around them in some ways. That's how humans are DNA'd. And therefore, what you see from the top plays a critical role. And I've seen that progress over the years in my own organization and setup. So my own experience, maybe I could add a bit of color, Vidya, on what we've done at CRISIL. And I heard Mr. Suresh speaking about the wonderful things that TCS has done. And a lot of them may be similar, but I think maybe I can focus on a few more that have been an add-on for CRISIL. One has been in terms of how we assess performance evaluation of leaders. And I think over a period of time, maybe since about a decade, we've had balanced scorecard methodology where we have called out metrics on what we track. And diversity has been a very, very important talent agenda from a strategic level. So across from our CEO to our next levels to the people managers, everybody would have a metric which has a target, a call-out target with respect to diversity. And not just a general diversity or inclusion, but also in terms of mid-management, and leadership levels as well. And there is constant interaction whenever we have with the board about how we're progressing, what is it that we're doing, what initiatives we are taking, right? I think the second would be, just simple and very effective policies, because I've had the opportunity to speak to a lot of women colleagues in my previous roles. And I think what came out is that, for instance, we have a very simple policy at CRISIL that whenever a woman employee leaves after 9 p.m. at night from a location, even if they have their own vehicles, our security guard would write their name, their address, their mobile number, and they will diligently receive a call, after they've reached home after a couple of hours to check on their safety and their return, right? We also obviously have someone who accompanies or a car facility of, dropping them back home after 9 p.m. But even if they're in their own vehicles, it's a matter of just showing that care. That we would be concerned, and I've seen so many women come back and say, look, this is just showing me that my organization cares for me, right? I think the typical buddy programs for returning mothers or second career options have been explored by a lot of organizations. But I reflect back to the point you were making, and even Mr. Suresh was making. Sometimes it's not so much about the flexi hour roles or the easier roles. It's also about making the choice difficult for women in terms of how interesting the role is. So I've had conversations when women said, I'm coming back. Yes, I might need a little bit flexibility when my child is young, but the choice has to be meaningful for me to make that choice that I want to come back to work, because sometimes it's monetary, sometimes it's beyond that. It's about how enriching the job itself is. So in many cases, it's just about having a good conversation as a counselor, as your manager, to say, what is it that's interesting for you in the long term so that you want to continue and invest in your career. And lastly, I would say, Vidya, it's about first and foremost being an inclusive journey. And I completely agree with you with your point that it's men and women, it's not men versus women. And we have to be very, very careful whenever we talk about any diversity and inequity. It has to be everybody together. We never sponsor when it's all women kind of conversation happening, because it just doesn't help. It has to be about inclusion. And you will see in the US as well, the language changing very recently. It's, of course, there's the new administration impact, but it's also about focusing a little bit more on gender inclusion. And I think that becomes even critical. So I just thought I'd share some of the experiences that we've had at CRISIL about those small things that matter, but also the bigger things in terms of the policy, the ecosystem, the learning and development opportunities that you give.
Yes, indeed, Preeti, and I can vouch for what Preeti said about the employees' safety or the women's safety. Well, back, Preeti, in 2007 or something, when I was with CRISIL, on a budget day, normally economics team will work till very late and early mornings, and of course, a lot of research analysts. And even back then, we used to get a vehicle, with, someone to accompany us, at home. So the company has been really very supportive. Preeti, in terms of, if we can move slightly now from, what CRISIL does in terms of, enabling women to, move into, when they come back to work, and, what and all the policies are there. What are your own personal experiences and how you have managed this balance? We talked a lot about unconscious bias here, even from the society that women face. So how has been your journey?
Yeah, I think on the question of unconscious bias, Vidya, I think everybody faces it, and it may not necessarily be only gender-based. It can be where you come from. It can be, the cultural and the regional nuances, right? So I think everybody is conditioned to what they've experienced during their lifetime. I can give you a few examples of, I started my career in the 2000s, right? And I joined the ratings business first in CRISIL, which was primarily about doing a lot of, factory visits, on the ground visit, to understand and meet the management, to understand the kind of work and business they do. And I would go to some of these, newspaper factories, fertilizer factories, and you would see that, you sometimes are probably the only one in the room, or definitely in the minority. And you would get those looks, and you would, in terms of why has, she come instead of somebody more senior, for instance, right? So I think just getting sort of being on your own, having that, focus with respect to what you want to do and how you want to achieve has been important. I can give you another example that, maybe when I was 8-9 years into my role, when I joined CRISIL, CRISIL decided to set up a new business, right? More on the global side. We required a company and we were setting up in Mumbai. And at that point of time, I was based in Delhi. I had gotten married. I had a 8-month-old son. I was living with my in-laws and husband. And, when this was getting discussed, I got to know through a conversation, right, that there is a new team, seed team getting set up, but it is based out of Mumbai. It's an interesting role. And I was wondering that why nobody has approached, because the credit experience I had was also relevant. So I went and I spoke to my manager at that point of time, and I said, look, I think I want to, look at doing something different, and would you consider? And, the thing was like, okay, we can, but this requires you to move cities. And then I had the conversation with my husband. Of course, that ecosystem is so critical that, we decided to move along with my 8-month-old son at that point of time. But I think, again, this is an unconscious bias to assume that, somebody may be interested or may not be interested. And therefore, what I usually and typically and really advocate is that having conversations is extremely important. Let's not assume what people's likes and dislikes are. And I would just, echo that to all the people managers, is those conversations become so critical. Because, when you're talking about achieving any organizational priorities or goals, it has to align to an individual goal and growth as well. And those conversations become extremely, material for that. The last maybe anecdote I can share with you is that I remember that I used to travel quite a lot. And when I shifted to some of the global business roles, I think my son was that time about 6 years old or so, right? And I used to travel to US for probably a week, 2 weeks sometimes. And so sometimes we would just leave them with our grandparents because my husband was also working and we were dual sort of, working family. And I remember that I was at an airport. It was the first time we were trying to leave our child, and none of us could actually travel along with him. So if you remember, there's an assistant service where anybody over 5 years, you can actually just have an assistant come and travel. And I remember leaving him, and there was a woman's security guard at the airport. And, she just made a comment in her language saying that you're leaving the child alone, is it? To travel. And then she looked at me, and I could see the judgment on her face, right, of how can you do this, being a mother. And I went back, and it did, got me into that self-guilt trip with that you were talking about. But I knew that, this is a way in which, you sort of, you have to create the right ecosystem. You have to rely on grandparents wherever it's possible. It's all right to do sometimes things which you think are okay to do. But I think those are some of the unconscious biases, that you go through both on personal or work life, in your setup. But I think, my advice typically to women and people in general, right, has been that first and foremost, you need to believe in yourself. You need to build your self-confidence. No one is going to believe in you if you don't believe in yourself, right? So I think that's where I feel somewhere women tend to self-doubt much more. And therefore, that comes out when we talk about progression. There have been enough and more studies, and Vidya, I know you will be a much sort of, an expert on some of these topics about, with the same sort of set of competencies, the way men represent what they can do for the organization. I can achieve X, Y, Z, and the women will be, maybe I'm not ready, right? So I think that becomes important. Second is really to invest in yourself and stay relevant. You have to back the confidence with capability and with relevance, especially in a time and era when things are evolving so much. Technology is so rapid. Workplaces are changing, expectations are changing. Just staying invested in yourself and taking that time to self-learn becomes important. And lastly, I would say is that give up before you need to. Don't overthink on the responsibilities, both personally and professionally. Be self-aware, be clear, because if you value yourself and if they value, the company values you, they will listen. Yeah.
Wonderful, Preeti. Means, yes, I think all of us will agree that, we have to be much more confident. And as you said, unconscious, your manager was looking in that, anecdote, your manager maybe was actually looking out for you and for your good.
Yeah.
But actually we need to ask, are you ready or not ready, and not assume things. That's wonderful. Anything else you would want to share, or otherwise we'll pause here. I think if there is a time, there will be questions, but okay, so we don't have questions, Preeti, right now. So thanks very much for joining us. Just stay on. I think they have some clip to play. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vidya. Thanks, everyone.
Miss Preeti, please hang on for just 1 minute. Yeah. We'd like to request Ms. Preeti Arora to accept a virtual token of our appreciation for having taken the time out to mark this special occasion for us. Your conversation with Dr. Vidya was really insightful.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And I think you touched upon very, very personal points that a lot of us have actually endured. We've seen these exact looks of judgments being passed on us every time we've had similar situations. May not be as critical as, leaving a child on a flight with a guardian, but even for much smaller, I want to go out and have a cup of coffee with my friend and the in-law is looking at me in a very weird way. So these are situations that we've all endured, and I think you tugged upon quite a few heartstrings, and we appreciate your having brought the personal aspect into this. So thank you, Ms. Preeti Arora.
Thank you.
In case you would like to drop off the call,
Thank you so much.
we are okay with that. I'd like to now request Dr. Vidya, Dr. Suresh, and Group Captain Vijay Kumar to please hand over the memento as a token of our appreciation to Mr. Suresh Raman. Dr. Vidya would like to convey a brief vote of thanks. She also wants to say. She also wants to say. Both of them. Okay. Right. When shall I ask everybody to go? Thank you very much. Okay, may I request everybody to proceed for tea and coffee and networking in the adjacent room? We will reconvene at 11:15 for the next session. 11:25? Right. Okay, we reconvene at 11:15 or 11:20 for the next session. Please note that the QR codes which are available across all the standees can be used to download the report, and you can read it at leisure. We can go into the next very special session, the panel discussion. Settle down, please, everybody. Hi. Okay. Okay, we are starting off now. Welcome back. May I request for some silence, please? Thank you. I hope you all had a very nice, enriching conversations and some very nice samosas and sandwich during your break. We now move on to the special session, which features a stellar panel of experts discussing the challenges that continue to impact women's workforce participation. Presenting the panel discussion on unseen barriers, rethinking paid work for women's inclusion with our distinguished speakers. I'd like to invite Dr. Sandhya Shekhar, Ms. S. Rukmini, Dr. Angayar Pavanasam, Mr. Vijay Kumar, and Dr. Vidya Mahambare to join us at the dais, please. In order to introduce them, Hemant has this very small AV queued up.
Dr. Sandhya is an advisor in digital and business strategy with over 30 years of experience across industry, academia, and the startup ecosystem. Dr. Sandhya held key CXO positions, including founding CEO of IIT Madras Research Park, and served on numerous advisory boards and government committees. An alumna of IIT Madras and IIM Bangalore, Dr. Sandhya is an award-winning author and a recognized leader in innovation and digital transformation. Ms. Rukmini is the founder and director of Data for India, a platform dedicated to providing data-driven insights on socioeconomic issues. A pioneering data journalist, Ms. Rukmini was India's first data editor and has written for publications like Mint, India Spend, and The Guardian. Ms. Rukmini has won several awards, including the Global Sigma Award for Data Journalism and the Chameli Devi Jain Award. Dr. Angayar is the project manager for the Tamil Nadu Women Employment and Safety Project, bringing over 31 years of national and international experience in academia, research, and project leadership. Dr. Angayar has published over 30 articles in esteemed journals and has held key roles at prestigious institutions worldwide, including the University of New South Wales and Nanyang Technological University. Mr. Vijay Kumar is the Vice President of Human Resources at Brakes India Private Limited, with 31 years of experience across sectors like pharma, chemicals, and auto components. Mr. Vijay has held leadership roles in business HR and site HR, focusing on talent management, organizational restructuring, and digitalization. A certified coach and active member of professional forums, Mr. Vijay is passionate about career development and coaching.
Thank you, Hemant. We are delighted to have all of you with us, and we look forward to a very educational journey in the next 1 hour. Dr. Sandhya Shekhar is the moderator for this panel discussion. Over to you, madam.
Thank you. And it's really a pleasure and honor to be here today with all of you. Thank you so much, Vidya, for this opportunity. And Captain Vijay Kumar, I don't find him here. As always, it's good to be back at MMA. Many congratulations, first of all, Vidya, to you, your team, and to Great Lakes for this wonderful research report, much needed. Come the beginning of March first week, and we all get excited about celebrating women, looking at the goods and not so goods and what's worked and what's not worked. So it's kind of celebration time to reinvigorate ourselves. And this happens year on year. But I do believe after all those discussions that we've had about women in various women's panels, this discussion is unique and significant. And let me tell you at least 2 reasons why I believe this is different. I remember a few years back when I was on a panel like this, I told group captain that, next time I'm here for a women's session, I will come only if I see some men in the audience. I'm seeing men in the audience, so give them all a big hand. And I also said, I'd like to see at least one man in the panel. And Mr. Vijay Kumar, so honored to have you here. So yes, and warm welcome to the others too, Ms. Rukmani, Dr. Angayar, and Professor Vidya Mahambre, who's the leading lady for this morning's discussion. And with that introduction, I'm going to drop the formal protocol and address you all by your first names for ease of communication. So coming back to why I believe this discussion is unique and different. We all have certain perceptions about women in terms of the strengths and challenges that they face. These perceptions are based on our specific contexts and situations. We draw inferences from them. But very often, what's true for us may not be true for the other person. So when we're looking at policy directions, which are very often huge enablers, especially for women, it is extremely important for policies to be inference and data-based. Therefore, a work like this is of monumental importance because it is based on an analysis of a cross-section of data from which we draw inferences and we see, can we create certain policy enablers? And we've had so many examples of policy enablers really having made a very significant impact, right from the grassroots to the board level. For instance, about 15 years back, when I stepped into a board for the first time, I remember asking myself, am I here on this board because of my capability? Or am I here merely because I'm a woman? And there are policy enablers for that, okay? Today, I'm happy to say that 15 years later, I happen to be on a board where I'm not the only woman. So the reason I was called into a board is not necessarily because I happen to be a woman. But the starting point is always a positive policy enabler, after which I think it becomes extremely important for both parties, the men and the women, to quickly shift to a position where everything is based on meritocracy. Yeah. So very often I have said we need to argue not for equality, but equivalence. And that's a discussion for another day, because sometimes these nuanced understandings of what we really mean by equality gets obfuscated by the need to have a slightly dominant role or a more vociferous voice and so on. And that's really not what we need today based on the research findings that you have. So that's one reason why we need this kind of robust research to start informing policy. The second reason is that, and this is something that I discovered when I got into research myself, all these years, I thought I was doing research when I was doing a consulting job. Yeah. And so I was with Gartner, so we said it's all research-based consulting. But when I got into serious academic research, I discovered, to my amazement, that data has its own way of telling a story. It is up to us to listen carefully to the stories that the data tell. Very often, we're not even ready to listen to these stories because we are going into this whole thing with a preset notion of what the reality is. So I think these kind of research reports are critical to ensure that we are really listening to the stories that real data from real sources is telling us. And very often this data can give us counterintuitive results, as Vidya was pointing out in her earlier talk. In my case too, for instance, after having been a part of a global MNC where I was really leveraging the advantages of a virtual organization, and virtual organization has been my area of work for the past couple of decades, I thought I should formally get into research to be able to evangelize virtuality in all its forms. But at the end of some pretty comprehensive research, I found where virtuality is not quite virtuous. And that's, again, some of the findings that is coming from your data. So from the point of, evangelizing virtual organization as being the ultimate solution for everything, including, women-friendly policies, you kind of move to a data-based inference where you say virtuality is good, but there are XYZ conditions where it is definitely counterproductive. So these kind of counterintuitive results are very important to understand and assimilate and guide us as we go forward. So I really look forward to today's discussions because we have people who are extremely well versed with research, and we have people who are very strong from the practice area. And what my work over the last couple of decades has taught me is that magic happens at the confluence of these two fraternities. So one of the reasons I have chose to engage actively with the industry, with the academic fraternity and the research fraternity, as well as the startup ecosystem, is because it is only at the confluence of this, when you're actually exchanging knowledge across these silos, that you find the real answers. So I'm hoping that at the end of today's discussion, we have some sound answers to some of the questions that we are faced with today. So just in terms of how the format will work, I would request each of the speakers to give some opening remarks of their views on today's topic. And then we will follow that up with a discussion. And all of you, please feel free to jump in with your own questions or your own perceptions in the open format, because that is what is going to add to the richness of the discussions today. Okay, so my job is merely to ensure that we follow a broad structure, but within that, let's be guided by what the audience wants to hear and what we would like to share. So shall we start with you, Rukmini, about your experience?
Thank you, and thanks very much for having me here today. I want to start by just mentioning one point which really strikes me as the evolution really of this discussion. So I come from a background in data and looking at large national data sets to make sense of the world. I run a public platform called Data for India, which aims to communicate socioeconomic data about India to a lay audience to advance the understanding of India. And I think in the 2010s, in the early 2010s, when the alarm bells over low female labor force participation first started sounding, when I think about that time and I think about now, I'm really struck by, how much poorer we were in terms of academic work from within India, and how much poorer the conversation was then, how limited the number of people talking about this was. And when I see the conversation now, which has gone through, a couple of waves where essentially we've had 5-10 years of really worrying deeply about falling female labor force participation. And then we've had the last couple of years of seeing this rise in labor force participation for women, wondering what it all means. One of the things I want to talk about is how pleased I am to see what an advance we've had in the quality of the conversation, in the number of people, particularly Indian female labor economists, engage in this conversation. And I really want to separately make a mention of Vidya and her collaborator Soumya's work on this in the last couple of years, not just in its quality and in the new dimensions to this discussion that have been coming out, but also as you particularly young people here will have seen, every conversation in India is so polarized now, and this extends even to data, even to economics. So there are almost camps on this argument, why is female labor force participation falling? What do we need to do about it? And to me, one of the great values, not just the academic quality, but one of the great values of what Vidya and Soumya's work has shown is that it's possible not to be in one or the other camp. It's possible to just purely advance knowledge. And, I think that's a net gain for everyone, for knowledge and for the understanding of this as a whole. So just wanted to make that one broad point. About women, and I'll talk just briefly a couple of points about women entering the labor force and then about women who are in the labor force. So one of the points I want to make is that when we look at the data about the recent increase, and I'll say, I'm willing to talk about recent increase because it's been 5 years now. We shouldn't get buffeted by trends that happen every 6 months here or there. This is a big country where things change slowly. But now that we've been seeing 5 years of substantial increase in female labor force participation, we can start to examine why this is happening. And one of the things that, I feel we should talk a little bit more about is the fact that so many of the women who've entered the labor force are working in what is called subsidiary work, which means this is not what they are occupied in for the whole year, it's for part of the year. There are many dimensions to subsidiary work. It also talks about the quality and quantity of jobs that are out there, right? I mean, I'm sure everybody would like more stable employment, but this is what is there. But I also want to make the point that stable long-term work is in some ways a privilege as well. And the pressures and toll that part-time or subsidiary work can put on people, particularly on women, in whose case subsidiary work often means balancing almost full-time work at home and a part-time or subsidiary job, is not to be taken lightly. The impact that it has, not just in economic terms, but also, emotionally, mentally for women is really something to think about. So I think sometimes labor statistics tend to be divorced from discussions around things like mental health, etc. They're seen as two separate worlds, the world of women working in farms and then the world of offices where mental health is a question. But when I look at subsidiary work, I also think a little bit about what is the toll that it puts on women, because I'm sure this is not part-time work in the way many of us understand it. That's one point. The other point I want to make is something that we've seen consistently in the numbers, which is when women do enter the workforce, what is the nature of the work they do? And one number that I will never get tired of talking about is that nearly 40% of women who are in the labor force work in jobs for which they get paid no remuneration. Labor statistics show us that nearly 40% of women in the workforce are what is called unpaid helpers, which means they work on family farms in rural areas and on family shops, small shops in urban areas. So when we're talking about women in the workforce, what does it mean to have a job in which no money comes into your hand? What does it mean for agency independence? Is this the same definition or thought of work as we have when we talk about work? So I do think that let's not stop just about thinking about women entering the workforce. What are the jobs they're getting when they're in the workforce matters enormously. And then the final point I just want to make in my introductory points is about the notion of dignity. Now, when we talk about surveys of the sorts of jobs that women want to do, particularly the jobs that young women want to do, they are very much the definition of what one would call an aspirational white collar job. They are things like teachers, they are things like nurses, they are very much professional white collar jobs. And I'm always struck by something a young woman told me in an interview a long time ago, which is she said, I want a job in which I have to wear a salwar kurta, which is pinned, where the dupatta is pinned. I carry a file and I go to an office. The nature of what she did in that office was less important to her, but the dignity of going to a job dressed like that mattered enormously to her. I think of this particularly in the context of Tamil Nadu, which is rightly proud of a very important number, which is that over 40% of all the factory jobs in the country for women are in Tamil Nadu alone. Now, that is a staggering number. It is really an enormous number. And I think it speaks a lot to the dignity that women want from jobs. And this is sometimes a conversation that I think the media gets quite wrong. There is a lot of very negative reporting around factory jobs. Of course, the conditions of employment need to improve. Everybody needs that dignity of employment. But the value of a factory job for young women in India, I don't think it's fully understood just what it means for dignity. So this is in some ways an intangible, maybe labor statistics cannot capture it, but the notion of dignity in employment and what it means for women and how transformative it can be is a third point that I've come to think is very important in our, thinking about how labor can transform. These were the initial points I wanted to. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rukmini. Very, very interesting, actually, right? I mean, self-esteem and stability. These are factors that, are slightly more fuzzy than quantifiable parameters. And I think self-esteem, not just at the level that you're talking about, Rukmini, but even at the corporate level, where you would really like to work with dignity, and stability, because I think this whole issue of the greedy employer that you talked about in your report relates to a sense of competition that arises from an insecurity about the stability of your own job. You want to go that extra mile to prove yourself that you're as good as your male counterpart. So stability becomes a very important factor. But you also touched upon a very interesting point in terms of the labor force of women in Tamil Nadu. And that gives me the perfect place to segue into the conversation with you, Angayar. What do you think has really contributed to enabling this in the state, and how can we replicate it in the rest of the country?
Morning all. Thank you, Vidya, for this opportunity. So before I just plunge into the answer for this question, since we have been driven in numbers a lot since morning, I just wanted to throw a random number, say 73 in front of you. I could see a lot of students here. So I'm expecting some response if I just put a random number, say 73 in front of you. Is there any comment about that number? You can just comment anything about that number. 73. Okay, thank you. That's a good statistics. Even more simpler, 7/3, it's today's date. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is many problems have very simple solutions. And above all, 73 is a prime number. So the right date is chosen to unveil this report. And since I'm seeing that like around more than 40 to 50% of the people here, women or maybe in the middle age group, I just wanted to have a quick question. How many of you have your own vehicle or anything in your name? Okay. So it's women. I'll come to men shortly so that we'll have a quick comparison. So I could see that it is only 20 to 30% of the women who raised their hand. Either it could be a vehicle or it could be any property or it could be a stock, anything related to kind of monetary economic empowerment. If I come to men, can you raise your hands? How many of you have vehicles, anything in your name? See, the percentage is much, much larger. That is the reflection of what Vidya was mentioning. So basically, when we yeah, good point. So thanks for the statistics. Basically, what I'm trying to drive here is when we talk in terms of women empowerment, we can see that through economic empowerment, social empowerment, political empowerment. And on top of all these things, which were rightly mentioned by our speakers, it is all about mental well-being as well, because which is normally being ignored these days. Earlier, it was like it was taken care. We are having a kind of a very closed society, and also many family persons will be there around you, so that it was taken care. But now that we are having a nuclear set of thing, mental well-being is actually ignored in a larger way. Okay, so first, in terms of economic empowerment in Tamil Nadu, as was rightly mentioned by you, it was like Tamil Nadu is standing in the top player with regard to women labor force participation, either in terms of rural or in terms of urban as well. The reason behind that is there are a lot of government schemes. Say, for example, the recent one is the Pudumai Pen scheme, wherein every girl who is into higher education, they are receiving 1,000 rupees per month as a scholarship, in case if they have done their schooling in the government schools. So that is one scheme. The next one is all about we are into various kind of training, because basically where women take kind of a backseat is to find out whether we are having the respective skill in the areas. And coming back to the sectors, when you're talking about sectors like in terms of agriculture or manufacturing or service sector, mentioning actually 40% of women who are working in the manufacturing sector in India is from Tamil Nadu. Is Greaves EV, which is located in Ranipet. The percentage of women working there is around 30 to 40% of women employees. And also when you talk about Crompton, which is actually having a lot of leadership positions, it is being run only by women since the inception of that company. So these are all some good standing examples in Tamil Nadu. And this is only a kind of a tip of the iceberg. Like we have lots of other very good examples, which we'll discuss in the forthcoming thing. And one other topic that I wanted to talk about is all about entrepreneurship. One is all about skilling. The other one is entrepreneurship. See, risk, generally women tend to be like risk averse. I'm sorry to make this kind of general statement, but that is the thing that is happening. But again, in Tamil Nadu, we are having few schemes which actually gives lots of openings to women-led startups. Say, for example, more than 1,000 plus startups, women-led startups are there in the last year alone, like into 2023. So basically, it is constituting around 30% of women who are in, which is having women-led startup. So basically, when you're talking about those women-led startup, obviously, since it is coming at the startup thing, it is all about innovation. It's not just about like another MSME. When you're talking about the MSME sector, the percentage is quite huge, especially if it is an informal sector. Informal micro enterprises, you could see around 70 to 80% of women are employed, wherein there is no much of revenue, sadly. But when you're talking about MSME, again, the percentage is very less with regard to the women participating because the access to finance is a bit difficult thing. So these are the two important aspects which I wanted to discuss, but the elephant in the room is something different. Can any one of you guess? Which is already talked about by Vidya. The triple care responsibility. Women spend around 30% of their time only in the triple care, which means that they have to take care of kids, they have to take care of the family members, they have to take care of the elderly parents in their home. So which comes under the unpaid category. So I'll leave that open for the rest of the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Angir. Very, very interesting points that you make about factory work. And I think today really needs to be a feel-good day because it's very, very important to celebrate how far we have come. I remember at the beginning of my professional journey, I was charged with the responsibility of automating some of these shop floor operations in one of the very large companies. And the management was very hesitant to allow me to come there. And I was very, very intrigued. I was wondering why. I mean, why this bias? It turned out it was not a bias actually at all. It was a very, very practical issue. They didn't have restrooms for women, So that's where we started a few decades ago. And today we find a proliferation of women on the shop floor in factories. And the Mr. Vijay Kumar here is the perfect person to comment on. Anga did mention that, yes, we have a lot of women in the factory. And I'm beginning to observe that it's the case across the country as well. But I also noticed that perhaps, we need to really think about issues that are normally brushed under the carpet, which is the employability factor of both men and women when it comes to shop floor work. Interestingly, what I found was that the women on the shop floor were handling very high-level jobs like Industry 4.0 related work and automation and things like that, perhaps because of some of their inherent capabilities. So, I mean, we need to always recognize the fact that men have some very special abilities, as do women, so therefore I argue about equivalence rather than equality. So I'd be very interested to know what your experiences have been when you induct women into your factory. Are there certain kind of jobs where you find them performing much better? And how would you recommend we replicate this success across? Yeah.
Thank you. And I also did some research because it's threatening to be the lonely panelist here. And it's happy to note that today I was going through some statistics that 30% of the workforce in India are women. And 18% of the GDP contribution to this country is from the women, which is actually, I would say, double the statistics which you would have noticed 5 years ago. So it's a good thing that let's give a big hand to the... And I come from an organization, I started my career in a battery making company. You would all have noticed a brand called Amaron, Amara Raja Batteries. That's where I started my career 33 years ago as a management trainee HR. And I noticed a very weird policy over there. And when someone used to get shortlisted in the interview, the final question from the GM or the operations head used to be, are you married? Yes. I'm talking about the men, interview the men. What's your spouse? Can she take up an employment with us? That's the wonderful policy they had, and it was a little weird. And even today, that's continuing. And when I left the organization some 23 years ago, the total population was about 2,300, out of which 230 were couples. 230 were couples out of 2,300 population. For the simple reason that the founder happened to be the Indian origin, South Indian origin, and he spent his prime part of his career in US along with his wife, and he understood the very necessity of building the nation building with the help of women being employed in a dignified way. So that's how. And we, in other companies, the moment after, after that company, I joined many other organizations. I tried to put my brilliant ideas that why can't we employ women, but I had mouthful from the leadership. That's a different story. We all have oppressions. What I'm trying to say is we all have oppressions that, employing the family members into the system will lead to a lot of disturbances. Absolutely no. Absolutely no. And if at all an employer has something to contribute to the economy of the nation, it's good to keep the doors open for the family members to be employed. That's number one. And interestingly, 30 years ago, we also employed a civil engineer, woman civil engineer. And my promoter was Mr. Gala, Big Gala. He was crazily chasing me to go around and release paper ads for some civil engineer. Luckily, we got one civil engineer, and she's still working there. She's going to get retired in a couple of years there. She's still working there as civil engineer. And of course, she may be GM civil engineering or something of that sort. And also, we started hunting for a safety officer from women colleagues. Very rare, very difficult to get. We couldn't get a woman colleague to be employed in safety, but finally, I was told that they got something. So, to me, it doesn't matter. And they can handle any amount of employment, obviously. Women can handle any kind of jobs except the heavy load, bearing the physical load carrying jobs. They can fit into any roles. And I have come across women colleagues who have been managing finances, who have been managing. I also luckily worked in a couple of pharma companies, including Pfizer. My CHRO was a woman, and my R&D head, global head, was a woman. And I don't think that they can, we cannot draw any line between which they can handle, which they cannot handle in manufacturing. But one thing what I observed was all that who grew very fast in the career, they were very willing to mobile. Of course, it comes with professional hazard, like sacrificing a little bit in the family front. They all were very mobile, globally mobile, and very self-reliant. And they found their own ways of managing families, managing kids. And that's all I would like to put it in very simple. And even today, having traveled for 33 years in this profession, I still notice after maternity, post-maternity, the turn up to the work is hardly 70-75%. That's my experience. And reasons when we examined, what we noticed was the family support. The other one is the medical, the ignorance of the needs of medical, and depth of receiving due counseling or mentoring from them. And I was going through some literature. What is this postpartum syndrome or something? And that's really true. And 5-6 years ago, we had a wonderful, brilliant colleague in HR, and she went for maternity. And she happened to be down with this syndrome or so. She stopped receiving phone calls for a year, and luckily, the management didn't decide to shut down the personal dossier. It was still open. The individual had started receiving phone calls and started responding to the company's mails only after 1 year. So these are some of the things that need to be taken care by the society or the families. I would say most of the families or family members of the employed women are highly ignorant of the support system which they have to or they ought to extend. That's the major debt I would find today, number one. Number two, government. Thanks to Madam who explained the government support. Obviously, if you browse, you will see a wonderful support system from state as well as central governments towards women empowerment. But how many of the family members are aware of that? How many of the women employees are aware of that? The spouses should be aware of all these things. Many do not know. Many do not know what kind of support system the government is extending. The other factor is the safety. The safety is highly is viewed to be a ghost from the family front. The family, even today, 75% of the families do not consider workplace is a safe workplace for women. I'm talking from manufacturing space perspective. I don't know about, I can't comment on other perspective. For the simple reason that the employers like us, we fail to establish or we fail to instill the trust in the family members that we are a safer place, and we need to do a lot. And what we think is simply adhering to the laws or the statutory obligations are enough, or adhering to the basic bare minimum policies are enough, but that's not enough to encourage women folks to come back to work after this maternity. And in addition to that, I would say for our Indian women, as far as my experience is concerned from manufacturing sector, the self-limiting beliefs are too high. Again, the self-limiting beliefs are too high. And we take the best of the examples of women employees who have Indra Nui. Okay, that's not the world. We have 90% of the very mediocre and average, or the people who really crave for the livelihood, and the women colleagues who really need to have the gainful employment. That lot is very important. And they suffer a lot out of this self-limiting belief, and they need to be helped. And if at all any NGOs or the women forums are going to support the employment generation or empowerment of women, please think through or explore the possibilities of starting centers that can really counsel or mentor or coach women as to how to manage their career post maternity, or as to how to balance between opportunities and the competition in workplace or in the job market. This is what I would like to say.
Thank you, Vijay. So, Vidya, having heard our speakers right now, what I would request you to do is kind of pick up some of the things, some of the facts that they have stated as they've observed, and say, do you find parallels in terms of the research findings, or do you find certain contrasting inferences that you're drawing? How do you compare and contrast whatever they have said with what your data is telling you? No, this is for Vidya, please.
It might sound a little contrast because I keep moving and I keep interacting with sections, across sections in manufacturing basis. So we have a number of women colleagues in shop floor and in junior level, mid-level, and senior level, of course, not too many. I interact with, I hear from them. I hear more than what I hear from the statistics or reports. I hear from them, and my disclaimer is this is my experience, and I'm not I'm not confronting or challenging anything.
There are a lot of situational issues, Vijay, and that depends on the culture of the organization, the nature of work that it is doing, and so on and so forth. So it's a little difficult to generalize across even organizations, or even between two locations of the same organization. So which is why it is very important to hear from Vidya about what is the pattern she's looking at a macro level.
So thank you, Sandhya, and thank you, all the panelists. If it is okay, I want to share first a couple of stories, and then we have the discussion. That time I will come back. But even though these stories are mine, I think they can be generalized pretty safely, because otherwise we should not extrapolate saying that, as Sandhya said already, what we experience and what other experience, then can be large differences. But I think in these stories there is commonality. So first story I want to share about is my mother and her, sisters. They were in a village. So they studied till 10th standard in a village. There was no way for them to come to urban areas for further studies. But their brother came to Mumbai. Later on, he got entire family and all the sisters. He essentially told them, you study how much ever you want to study. There is no pressure of getting married. Eventually, all of them, 2 of them became doctorate, 2 of them did post-graduation. All of them worked before the marriage, after the marriage. What this tells us is, if there are opportunities presented and if the environment changes, whether a man or a woman, everyone can thrive. But for women, one additional challenge is that they could come because their brother came, right? But many women don't have someone in urban area. So for example, what Tamil Nadu government is doing, and other governments also is doing, is what is the housing facilities, safe housing facilities for single women who want to come in urban areas and work. Okay, so that is one thing which is still not happened in the enough proportions, because safe and clean housing remains quite in manufacturing. I know the companies have their own hostels and, have for the migrants and build, but staying in a hostel, which is company run, and staying in general in a hostel, it is much more, freedom. So that is one thing. I think that thing is still not given enough enough importance in terms of how we build, enough housing, especially for the single women who want to take up job and migrate for work related. Second story I want to share is about when the children are growing up. I think it is very important for children to see what happens in the household, right? And we have talked about like equal responsibility. So when we were young, my father essentially said to my mother, if you want to work, study further, study. So she did study when we were young. And then she got a job. Always my father was the one who took care of us over the weekends because she had to study. And so it wasn't about like he's helping. It was about he sharing the responsibility, because when we use the term help, it is like other person needs help, so I will help a bit, right? But it is more about it is our home and the responsibility should be shared equally, right? So moving that dialogue from, I think, helping to sharing more broadly and I'm sure men who are here are already doing, because perhaps that's why you are here. This crowd is selected, right? If you decided to attend this event, means itself you are, in that group. But maybe it doesn't happen in all other households. So I think everyone spoke about, how much support is required at home and how. Third story is from a corporate where I worked before. This was way back in 2007, and how the employer empathy and support can help a lot. So I was expecting my child, and my boss then was Dr. Subir Gokand. Unfortunately, he's no longer here. Later on, he went on to become a deputy governor of RBI. He left CRISIL and went to RBI. One fine day, he just asked me, have you found a babysitter? And I said, no, I'm still looking for it. He said, the area where you are living, Rao, I used to live 10 years back. And we are still in touch with that babysitter. If you want, I can talk to her. And I said, please do, sir. That babysitter, means his child babysitter, became my son's babysitter for 7 years till we were in Mumbai. And after that happened also, I told him, I still don't want to come to office. I still want to work from home. And there's no official policy back then in 2007 of work from home. But the employer showing that confidence in you, that if I give the choice of working from home, and that is equally important for women, I believe, or anyone, women or man who works from home, not to misutilize that, because if we misutilize the facility, the next person is not going to get that. And so I could work from home till my son became 2 years old, completely, back then. So I think it is mutual, whether it's, at home, whether in the, at the workplace, it is always both the sides that have to work together and, improve the, lives for everyone. Yeah, so maybe I can come back later, but I think on the commuting thing, I agree totally. Our survey in Chennai, which is slightly dated, maybe 2019, in Tamil Nadu, majority of the households have a two-wheeler. And majority of them used to be, or even now, are bikes, motorbikes. So that itself is a representation how automatic, means I'm not saying women should drive motorbikes, but in general, it automatically gives you this thing that how it is, transportation or the personal vehicle access is skewed. Now, of course, we have much more, women, scooters and all, we see much more, but women rely much more on the public transportation, which lengthens their journey, which is inconvenient, and time trade-off for women is, much more. So definitely I agree, like a lot more needs to be looked at from the commuting angle. Maybe I'll come up on the other things later on when we're having discussion.
Sure. Just before we proceed into a discussion, if anybody in the audience has any questions, please write it down on a slip of paper and pass it on. I'm sure people, yeah. Oh. Okay. If I can have those questions, it'll help me prioritize those. Yeah. In the meantime, I would like to pick on one very, very important issue that you spoke about, Vidya, and I would like to hear from all our other speakers about what they feel, because there are a whole bunch of enablers that we can think of when it comes to making the work environment better for women. We can talk about flexibility, we can talk about job rotation, we can talk about better working hours, we can talk about virtual work, so on and so forth. But the one thing that I'm not sure we have got our heads around is a huge mindset shift. Yeah. It is not just the woman who thinks that, her primary responsibility is that of a caregiver, and if a child is running a high fever, she needs to stay back home. I think the mindset shift needs to happen everywhere, in every facet, whether it is at the workplace or at the home, whether it is our generation or the older generation or the younger generation. Um, we just spoke about postpartum blues. I'm wondering, why is it that no father suffers from postpartum blues? If he had taken on the responsibility of parenting equally, and I'm beginning to see some very encouraging trends in the recent generation. They're really talking about how to share better. But a few years back, at least, I've never heard of any fathers suffering from postpartum blues. Not very many organizations are giving paternal leave. They're all giving maternity leave. Yeah. Why is it not being contemplated? Why is it that, after the first 3 months, when a mother necessarily has to be with her child, the father is not given another 3 months or 6 months off to share that load of parenting and feel the pinch when he has to go to work and the child is left crying at home? That kind of sensitizes everybody. Even your boss, who has gone through a similar experience, will be able to empathize better with what it means to be balancing multiple responsibilities. Yeah. And I think policies that enable a mindset shift is what we probably need to be prioritizing at the end of all of this. Take these distinct data points in terms of what are the inhibitors and what are the facilitators, and see how can it be transposed into some preconceived notion that we already have of how the man and woman need to be prioritizing their time, their growth trajectory, and so on and so forth. One very, very valuable point that Vidya has highlighted in her report is that even amongst couples that are equally educated, very often, campus romances flourish, so they have the same degree from the same institute, yeah? But you find that the man is probably on a faster growth trajectory and earns a little more. That's what her data is saying. That's not what I'm saying. It's what the data is saying. Why is that so? Yeah. So I think we need to kind of delve a little deeper. And I would just love to hear from each of our panelists very, very quickly as to, in the context of what they are doing, what is the one mindset shift that you think is important, and where in the entire scheme of things? Because this is a multiple stakeholder responsibility. It's not just the woman, it's the man, it's the employer, it's the family, it's the social support system, so on and so forth. So where do you see a very urgent need for this shift before we go on to the questions from the audience? Yes, Rukmini, let's start with you.
Thank you. Just a quick example really from my own experiences and my own workplace as well, which is when you shift the conversation from maternal or paternal leave to parental leave, then I think that allows some space to think about what, given the opportunity, what would men do? Because sometimes it is that the opportunity simply is not available. So in my organization, for example, I'm the only one with kids, but when we set the organization up, we wrote in an equal sort of parental leave policy, partly because of my own experiences of, despite my spouse wanting to be involved, the parental leave available to him was so much less than what it was to me, because I had taken extended leave at the time. And just another example, to employers as well, you had this example, Vidya, of how things were with your employer when you had young kids. I had at one point the opposite experience. It's funny to think about it because this was 2016, 17, and I wanted to return to work, but I wanted to work from home. I was not given that opportunity and I quit. And then 2 years later, the entire world had to work from home. So I really had a laugh thinking about that employer who thought that not seeing my face for 9 hours every day would, make his organization fall apart. And then a couple of years later, the whole world had to do it.
Such a powerful observation there. I had the exact contrasting experience because way back in 1994, I was pushed into working from home by an over-enthusiastic boss who said, I'm going to give you a PC. This was even before internet came, or it was in its nascency, and said that you work 1 hour, it's okay if you have a baby, So it really depends on who are these people who are encouraging you or supporting you. So that's very, very true. Yes, Sandeep. Mindset.
I would just take a different perspective. Like from women's point of view, if you see, the first person to take the guilty trip will be the women, the mother or whoever the responsible women will take. So what happens here is it is with regard to the emotional intelligence that we have to deal with. So right from the beginning, but as you rightly mentioned, the current Gen Z, they are very vocal about this. Like right from day one, they are saying that both of us should take care of the kids. So that is a very real good trend, which will obviously reflect on the labor force participation as well. Yeah.
I think I should give you 1 additional minute because you're outnumbered here.
Okay.
Yeah.
To respond to the first question about the paternity leave, nowadays they're demanding this. The moment we say we don't have the policy, and they sit down across my desk and say, why don't you put your policy? And luckily, the new labor code is also bringing in the provisions for paternity leave. But that's not enough. 2 weeks or 3 weeks are not enough. In what's the policies always will lay down, you should take in 1 stretch, 2 installments, 3 installments. These are all very weird thoughts, and it can be intermittent and left to the choice of the gentleman. And another thing is, which I forgot to notice in my first stint, is that the daycare center facilities are not that great here. And I did work for a couple of US-based companies, Pfizer and BorgWarner. I did visit many factories long ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And as a part of socialization with my HR colleagues, I was taken along to the daycare centers. And the daycare centers were even attached with the doctors, the pediatricians, once in a day. That was the degree of importance they used to give. And we don't have, unfortunately, we don't have a legislation to enforce certain guidelines for daycare centers. And also, as Vidya mentioned about the single woman accommodation. And these two things are functioning on commercial lines today in India. And to take care of your kid, you need to spend 15 to 20,000 in a daycare center. But these two things will have to be addressed in India, and the legislations will have to be brought in. And I can say NGOs can play a great role in doing or aiding these great daycare centers, and there has to be a stipulation that enforces employers to find a daycare center for the women colleagues, and to find a nice, decent, safe accommodation for women colleagues. These two factors do add a lot of pluses and minuses. In absence of these two, women coming from 800 kilometers of distance post-maternity, they won't turn back, I think, because these two things are not available with them. You can adjust with 5 or 6 women colleagues, but once you become a mother, you need to have a little protected and serene ambience.
Right.
These are the two things, I think.
Right. No, very, very important point, Vijay. But I would just like to stress that it's not the numbers that matter. Whether it is government or corporates, they all say, hey, you know what, we have set up so many daycare centers. Now, this is such an sensitive issue with any parent, especially mothers, that you don't want to compromise on the quality of care given. So just a daycare is not enough. High quality daycare where you know that the child is being taken good care of, loving care of, is absolutely essential. And I think we have a very, very long way to go there. Quick thoughts from you, Vidya, on the mindset issue?
Yeah, 2 thoughts perhaps.
Yeah.
One is that I don't think we recognize, frankly, the contribution of men who, in fact, like most of the mentors and most of the support that women get, whether the organizations or at home, there are a lot of men involved. I know one company who actually celebrates that, and the men who work, help in the or share the responsibility at homes, they in fact give them that household, they give consumer durables to encourage, other men to take up. So I think recognition that the trend is changing, and there is a lot of men who are involved in equal share, because once you there is a lot of demonstration effect. Right? If there is a demonstration that yes, there are men who help and take equal responsibility, lot more other men who want to do will also automatically do. There is enough research which shows that demonstration effect works.
Yeah.
That is one. So we need to celebrate that. Second, I think women need to understand that we should ask for help. Many times I think, and I have done this myself, that we don't ask for help when we, we need help.
Right.
So that mindset we need to change. There is no ideal, I think, mother or ideal wife, that kind of thing. But how maybe Kerala has started, I don't know, there is no impact evaluation. Just now they've started in the textbooks, having this conversation. So from much younger age, have these, conversations around that. But coming back to daycare, since you mentioned the quality daycare, one thing I mentioned in my opening remarks, that in India, we haven't tried enough school-based daycare. Because school already parents trust. That's why the child is in that school, right? So in Western countries, there is a daycare, which in the school premises only it happens after the school.
Right.
If you have a daycare which is at the employer place, kid needs to be transported from the school to the employer place, which simply not feasible for a couple of hours. Right. So I think some state government needs to take a lead in terms of trying to do those pilots, so we can see if, that improves.
Okay. Very good point, Vidya. And since we're a little hard pressed for time, I'll go on to questions from the audience. Vijay, you should probably be taking this question, because the question from Mr. Srinivasan of Penguin Consultant is, what is the reason that women are not employed so much in the manufacturing side? We all know that they are kind of inundating the services sector. He mentions industries like cement, sugar, paper, etc. Quick answer to that.
Today, absolutely, majority of the employers, they don't have any averse to employ women. Absolutely no. Barring a few MSMEs, I'm not underquoting MSMEs, because they have their own caste or economic constraints. We are not averse. We are not at all averse. But I would say, I will re-emphasize the same, the self-limiting beliefs do come in way. And I do agree that most of the employers, even today, live in a kind of notion that women cannot carry out this work, that work. And I told my example, 32 years ago, we had a civil engineer who has been supervising or overseeing the constructions, the tunnels and new sites and commissioning and erection, whatnot. So we are not averse to that. But in pockets of generations at board level, yes, this stigma is there. And it only will have to be addressed by statistics and some of the powerful, I don't want to say legislations, powerful themes and stories will have to address that. We are not averse to. In fact, 70-75% of my shop floors are full of women colleagues. I would say that mostly electronics and electronics and communication things. Another thing I would like to mention here, it's not a negative rider. If I ask majority of my women colleagues at shop floor level about their career ambition, I'll get a blank face. That's not a welcome note in manufacturing. And they don't see a career. I'm talking about a diploma or an ITA who's working in the shop floor assembling machines or little supervising this. They don't see a career beyond 4 or 5 years. An average workforce I'm talking about, among them, there could be bright spots. As she said, a lot of counseling, a lot of mentoring, and a lot of the social service kind of bodies will have to come into. It's not that the employer can create. The NGOs can create avenues for this kind of wonderful women workforce to go and seek support as to how to ideate or blueprinting their own career.
Thanks, Vijay. Just a request to keep our responses brief so that we can accommodate a few questions. Yes, Younger. Please
just
go ahead.
one point to add to his thing.
Sure.
In these sectors, there is a bit of lack of mentorship.
Right.
Basically, in all these sectors, like if we can identify one mentor who can actually spread the message that they can go up in the career,
Right.
that will help a lot.
Right. Very true. Lack of awareness could very often be the reason that people are not taking this up. I'm very curious. Who's Mr. VK Swami, MMA member? There he is. I expected you to be a very young man. You know, his question is, and I invite any one of you to answer his question very briefly, though. How about workplace becoming a place of romance if employed? Your comments. That's a very...
The answer should come from the other side.
Sorry, what did you say?
The answer should come from the other side because we
From
can see
the
a lot
other
of
side.
young generation there.
Does any one of the panelists want to respond to that?
I didn't understand the question. What's that?
No, he says, how about workplace becoming a place of romance? I mean, you see that as a great motivator for women to come to work. I mean, that's definitely a motivator for, campuses, right, Vidya? I mean,
But the question has one positive aspect, meaning that we are having 50-50 men and women. It gives a choice of.
yeah. Okay. Yes, please. I think we have time for a couple of quick questions. Yeah. Okay. What practical steps can businesses take to ensure women are not only included in the tech-driven future, but also empowered to take leadership roles in this transformation? You know, my answer, my very honest answer to this question is, we have to work as quickly as possible to make the place as gender agnostic as possible. When we go to the workplace, I think it is important for each one of us to actually forget that, we happen to be a woman or we have, one is a man. That's extremely important. And the moment it's not there in our mind that either I need special privileges as a woman or, on the other hand, I'm expected to do more. If we don't go with that mindset, and my work and capabilities are going to be judged only based on what is the benefit that accrues to any organization, I think the leadership role will come by itself. I can say so from my own experience. I'm very often asked this question, I mean, how did you navigate your career and how is it that you've been given these kind of responsibilities? And my short answer is, there is no method to the madness. If to impress all of you, I could say why I had this fantastic career plan in front of me, and that's how I navigated my career. No, the short answer is no. Why was I given key responsibilities? Because somebody thought that this is a donkey that will deliver the goods. As simple as that. A hardworking donkey who can be relied on to deliver the results. Okay. So what matters at the workplace is your ability to deliver results. Yeah. And just go there with that mindset. Forget about the fact that you're either at an advantage or a disadvantage because you're a woman. And at the workplace, you're so involved and passionate about what you do. And chances are, if you're part of a team that believes the same way, this difference should cease to exist. Yeah? So the backlash that Vidya was talking about will not exist the moment the men have the confidence that, hey, this lady got promoted because she is better than I am. Yeah, not because she happens to be a lady. Yeah. So those of us who feel that sense of inhibition, please forget about it. Just go about your jobs as best as you can, and I'm sure you will get to the leadership roles that you aspire. Okay, this question is, thank you. Mr. Vijay Kumar,
Yeah.
have you personally overseen any policies that has made diversity, equality, and inclusion more prominent?
Yes. I'm in the process of sitting with some of my senior colleagues and framing up a policy. This is about identifying the roles in which women only should be employed. I mean, the ideal roles, I'm not sounding very partial, ideal roles in the sense, plan is to identify at least 20 to 25% of the roles wherein for next 5 years, only women should be employed. So this is a degree of determination with which we are working. I am part of it and proud to say that I am part of it. Maybe in a year's time, Breaks India can put this into practice. This much I agree.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah. Okay, I think we've run out of time. So, yeah, is there another question also coming up? Okay, Dr. Vidya, as someone who has plans for migrating for work, I wanted to know, you ever seen the accommodation for those who migrate for work, which you talked about? On a positive note, is there anything good you've seen from your research, Vidya? And I would actually like Angayar also to comment on it, please. Or maybe if, with your permission, Vidya, Angayar can go
Yeah,
first and
because
then you
I
can.
was going to talk about that only, so
Okay.
you can talk about the recent,
Yes.
yeah,
Perfect, yes.
Basically, with regard to the working women hostel, we do have the popular Tori hostels which are available.
Speak closer to the mic.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah. So basically, Tamil Nadu government has this through this Working Women's Hostel Corporation, we have got Tori hostels which are available exclusively for working women across the state in few places. But there are plans to expand or to scale up that as well. And also on top of that, regarding the crash program, we are also in talk and we are planning to have a kind of a framework across the state so that we have like based on the demand, we wanted to have crash programs established at certain locations across corporations and also across various other centers which have kind of women intensive workforce places.
Okay. Do you want to quickly add to that, Vidya? Any one positive thing that you've noticed about accommodation?
Oh, not really, other than
Not
this
really,
scheme.
okay.
I'm not, means there are a lot of hostels, working women's hostel, but we need like clean and safe. So clean and safe hostels, they must be around, but I have not done
You've
research
not.
in that, so I'm
Okay.
not aware.
Okay. Okay. I think we still have a
Even
long
then,
way
there
to
is lot
go.
of lack
Yeah.
of it, yeah.
Long way to go. Yeah. So Swati wants to know from Rukmini, what key data points highlight the barriers women face in workforce participation, and how can this data? That's a huge question. Maybe you can just pick the top one. Yeah.
I think research has settled on seeing these in two sorts of groups. One is to do with the quality of jobs that are available, that either they are not seen as safe enough, high enough quality. Sometimes there's just a job squeeze that if there aren't enough jobs available at all, then they tend to go to men first. Also, sometimes a skill mismatch, worries about safety. So those are all on the job quality side of things. And then there are the factors that hold women back from the family side to enter the workforce at all. These include unequal sharing of domestic responsibilities, notions of what constitutes women's honor and respectability in terms of leaving the marital home in terms of work. So it's a combination of norms as well as jobs and job quality, and about the general economy in times of squeeze of jobs, what happens to availability of jobs for women.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rukmini. Is that the last question? Dr. Angayar, how do safety concerns impact women's workforce participation in urban areas? And what measures does your project take to address this? I mean, I know for a fact that safety concerns are really, really huge, and it can often be a huge deterrent to women entering the workforce. But the solutions from Angayar, yeah.
Basically, we are targeting at various levels to begin with the Thank you. So to begin with, actually, we are having this gender and policy lab who are trying to gender sensitize, basically from the school level, wherein we wanted to break those stereotypical thoughts which happen from the childhood. So that is one of the things that is happening right now. And also we are trying to have some kind of heat maps across, to begin with at Chennai, and also across the state, so that we know which locations have more movement of women and what is the safety aspect over that particular place based on the survey. And also we are also planning to have some kind of integration with the Kavalan app. I don't know how many of you have seen or have heard about this Kavalan app. So through that also we are trying to have some kind of initiatives through which we wanted to have some kind of good street lights in the workplaces, or also in the way to that particular places, and also those things we're also working on that. So these are just in the infancy stage.
I think we have. Any other questions, or do we wrap up? One more? Okay. Is this from, yeah, do we have time for that? Okay. What is an advice, or there was some other question before that? Yeah, did we skip it? What are the biggest digital barriers women face in the workforce by your experience, and how can they be addressed? So I'm not entirely sure what you mean by a digital barrier, but if you mean working digitally and working virtually, then I can say for a fact that research, the kind of research that I've been doing over the past several years shows that there are certain phases in your life when digital work can really, really help you. Yeah. You need the flexibility to work from a different place and not do that commute every day. You need the flexibility of work hours. Okay. You need to be there. For instance, I'm a traditional mother who wanted to open the door for my daughter when she comes back from school. So, virtual work gives me that liberty to take that 15 minutes off or half an hour off and work longer towards the evening. Yeah. So very often it can be an enabler. But where is it a barrier? I mean, I'm sure there are, research is also pointing to the fact that there are multiple ways in which it can actually become an inhibitor, or at least a challenge at the very least. Number one, as women, I think most of us want to be perfectionists, so we absolutely stretch ourselves beyond what is needed, and 8 hours becomes 10 hours, very often 12 hours. Yeah. So the digital workplace allows you or makes you extend your work hours beyond what is absolutely necessary. And number two, there are certain kinds of work where I think physical presence is absolutely important. So make that provision in your lives. Find the support system for you to actually go out there and network with your colleagues, because it is that physical interaction that allows things like innovation to happen, where you're sharing ideas, where you're sharing thoughts. So, digital work will never obviate the need for physical interaction. So please strike a balance between the two. Yeah.
Basically, I think full-time work from home, women simply lose networks,
Yeah.
I feel. Because men, even if they're working from home, men go out a lot more in the evenings and have automatically access to a lot of peers and networks. I think women, if they simply work from home, I think the network effect, all of us know how much our founder used to say, your network is your net worth. And women lose out on a lot of that, network. So I agree it should be more hybrid.
Sorry.
Is there more questions?
I believe the doctor here wants to make a quick comment. Yeah.
I just need one.
Yeah. Sure.
I am Dr. Chokalingam, cardiologist. I'm really happy to hear all of your words. Just only one comment, as Captain permitted. Please remember, all women organs are more stronger than men by 15%. More so the heart is. Why it has been given? Because you are going to give birth types. That is the one nature is given. But unfortunately, I am seeing as long as women are menstruating, the estrogen is protective for all organs, including the heart. But the protective estrogen effect has gone because you are getting into the competitive world, the adrenal secreted more. So 20 to 30 years, I'm seeing both equally men and women getting heart attack. The reason is you be at any time happy. So happiness in giving, much more happiness in forgiving, you must understand. Add 1, 0, any number of zeros after 1, the value of 1 is only when when you are existing. Don't add simply zeros to the 1. And please avoid hurry, worry, curry to get buried. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doctor. That's indeed a very happy note to end on. And Vidya wanted to say a last few final words. Yeah.
I don't want to say anything more. I just want everyone's attention to There are a lot of people from Great Lakes who have traveled here all the way, and there are some of them in that who really at the back end put this report together. And I would please like them to stand and all of us to give applause. So Yash, Rishabh, Ramya, Pratima, Manish, Angeline is at home. So yeah, please come. And I think Vansh
Yeah,
and Shiver from
Vidya, I'm just going to
because we
take a
can't do
minute.
this together by alone. So
Yeah. Group captain, just one moment, please. In the spirit of spreading the same happiness, I'm just going to take the liberty of picking on a point that you made earlier in recognizing the role of men in our lives, because very often we tend to underplay that. We have group captains standing here. How can I not make that statement? Yeah. So let us first applaud all the men in our lives. I mean, yeah. Now
can give them a big hand.
invite. Yeah.
Angeline is not here. She was
Thank you. A big thank you to all the speakers and panelists there.
panelists for accepting the invitation and coming. We'll contribute. No, I think the continue to give.
Oh, exactly. So please don't jump the gun. No, please, 1 minute. She was right when she said we tolerate her. Why don't you all sit down and we will all stand behind you, please?
Yeah, I think it's better than that.
Thank you. Okay, now that many people have taken whatever I wanted to say, those words right out of my mouth, there is very precious little left for me to say at this juncture, except to thank the very nice panelists for a fantastic discussion. There were lots of very, very nice points which we were made. And I'd like to call upon Group Captain Vijay Kumar and Dr. Vidya to please felicitate them with a very, very small token of our appreciation. One second. No, please, please, please wait 1 more minute. Oh my good Lord. This is not your class, okay? Right. So this has been a very, very productive morning. A big thank you to the team at Great Lakes Institute of Management and Madras Management Association who made this event possible. Let's keep these conversations alive, not just today, but every day. I'd like to very quickly draw your attention to the QR codes which are available in all our standees. Please scan them and you will get the access to the full report, which is a 40-page report. And please, let's take these conversations forward to our workplaces, to our homes, and try and see what little difference that we can make. Because these are generational shifts and we need to begin, and we need to begin. That's it, right? May I request all of you to please rise for the national anthem before joining all of us for food outside.
Punjab, Sindh, Gujarat, Maratha, Himachal, Yamuna, Ganga, Uchal, Jagati, Taranga. तब शुभ नामे जागे, तब शुभ आशीष मांगे, गाहे तब जय गाथा, जन गण मन जय हे पालक भाग्य विधाता, जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे